Two. Hey, folks, welcome to another episode of the Bulwarg Disclosure Podcast. This guest really needs no introduction. He's kind of backed by popular demand, but we have Dr. Jack Kruse here today. Jack, thanks for joining us again.
Hey, what's up?
I thought also it'd be really timely, it's a very timely point to get Jack back on the podcast because of the things we discussed last time. And right now, the release of these recent JFK files, which some people would argue maybe Pam Bondi kind of fucked up and in some ways, but at the same time, from what I can
Well,
tell, there's a lot
what
to
you're saying is
gather.
what you're saying is fucked up. Let's be very honest.
Yes.
I think this is deniable plausibility.
Hmm.
I don't believe that anybody's fucked up. I believe everything being done right now is being done by design.
Hmm. We clearly have an administration that has a heavy Zionist influence to it. So I have my own theories as to why, but why do you think that they would have released these files that many of them implicate severely, Israeli interference and involvement in the JFK assassination? Why would they give us that?
Well, I mean, as I said, on Danny's podcast in October, that it was obvious that this was a RICO case, that many parts of the government were involved. It wasn't just the CIA, the forerunners, the ONI, OSS, War Department, all General Groves guys. That's where this came from. But then what did they do? They pulled the mob in, both Murder Inc. and the Jewish mob. And, you and I were just talking before the podcast started. Danny did a follow-up with Judith Very Baker because I told him, if you're truly the conspiracy theorist guy, this is the lady you need to get on because I've already vetted her 5 years ago, just so you know, for completion's sake. On July 4th, 2000, I had her over my clinic in front of 120 of my members. And she brought every piece of data that she had. Why? Because she did not know, and I did not disclose it to her, all the things that I knew. But I wanted to find out if she truly was who she said she was. And based on what she brought to me, I can tell you that she was. Now, do I also know that she doesn't know everything that I know? Yeah. I mean, the boxes that I found in Charity Hospital, the boxes that I found in the basement of Tulane, these were boxes from MK Ultra that were actually never destroyed by Richard Holmes. And you need to remember, I think even in Danny's podcast that he did with her, they talked about the JFK movie, and you heard Judith said, I couldn't even watch it
Mhm.
because it bothered me so much. And you and I were just talking about, before that one of Judith's problems with her storytelling, she tries to be uber accurate because she's been derided for so long, but it takes away from the big part of the story. She doesn't really understand that the big part of the story for her, no one really gives two shits about her relationship with Lee. I'm talking about the sexual relationship, the
Mhm.
love relationship. But that clearly is a big deal to Judith. I realized that when I met her and talked to her, and I understand it. I mean, I want to be an unsensitive asshole here, but she doesn't understand that there's other parts of this story that are really big for history. Not only the JFK assassination and who really was involved, because this whole release of the JFK files completely throws the Warren Commission out the window. What people need to remember, and I think I told you this last time we talked, I told you, you need to understand where Helms came from. He was Alan Dulles' right hand man. He
Mhm.
was handpicked to run the CIA when they made the move between MK Ultra to SRI. He's the one that destroyed the files in 73 before the Church Commission because they knew the Church Commission was coming.
Mhm.
What was one of the biggest things in the Church Commission that had to be destroyed that wasn't, that we found out about? You listen very carefully to Judith and Danny, and I know it's hard because I listened to it, and a lot of criticism I have for Danny. Why? He didn't do his homework. He didn't read her books. he didn't know all the background information because he could have got to the blood and guts. But when Roger Bannister was killed, that was the FBI liaison with Alton Oshner before he became a CIA asset. He was killed with the heart attack gun that you heard about in the Church Commission.
Right.
Okay. Helms wanted to bury that. Now, here's the other part that's really germane to this story. And hopefully people will listen to what I told you last time and go and listen to the Judith Ferry Baker interview. You need to realize at the end of the JFK movie, there's one slide. You guys can just rent the movie and go all the way to the end. In 1979, Richard Helms confirmed that Clay Shaw was a CIA asset. Now, you can throw the rest of the movie out, okay?
Well, especially if you know who directed it, Arnon Milchan, who was an admitted Israeli spy.
Right. And he fronted Oliver Stone. A lot of people think Oliver
Sorry, he
Stone.
produced it, not directed. You're right.
Right. And he was in with Oliver Stone. A lot of people think Stone was a problem. I got to be honest with you. My research tells me I'm plus or minus that. I don't know if I really believe that Stone was working on the behalf of the Zionists. I actually think that he was just trying to get this movie out. My big thing with Stone is that when they put the two pictures of the cages of the mice and the rats in the movie, but didn't talk anything about Oshner, that was my biggest problem with Stone. Why? Because I know firsthand that Stone knows that information. Okay. I'm not going to tell you how I know it, but I can tell you he knows that information. And it didn't make the movie. And my belief has always been, since I got that information, that he knew that it was because of the gentleman who produced the film, because the Mossad did not want the information out in that film when it came out. But the thing that I want everybody to know why this is really important, at the end of that movie, you see in 1979, here's another part of this salami sandwich that we haven't talked about. How did Clay Shaw die? He also died of a cancer. And he had deniable plausibility because he was a heavy smoker. Everybody knew that. He also had a pretty brisk nightlife because he was a flaming homosexual.
Yeah.
But there's data out there that I've uncovered that he also was injected with the SV40. And that's part of the reason that he gets taken out in 74. Why? What was going on in 74 after the Warren Commission? Remember, this is when the CIA takes Nixon out of the White House because he's also questioning the Warren Commission. Right at this time is when Hale Boggs, who is on the Warren Commission, starts to flip. That becomes a big issue. Why? Because they know that Clay Shaw has got a lot of dirt on Hale Boggs. Why is that? Hale Boggs was incredibly important in getting the Linac for Oshner.
You think Jolly West got to Clay Shaw like he did Rubenstein?
Oh, I'm going to tell you, that's the other misnomer in Judith's podcast. She told Danny, and I heard her say it, that Jolly West was the one that injected him. That's not true. Jolly West was there on the behalf of MK Ultra on Gottlieb, but they didn't get the SV40 from there. The other thing that she said I thought that was very interesting, and this told me, because she told me this 5 years ago, when she told me that the rest of the cancer cells wound up going to MD Anderson. I have found evidence of that as well, but I will tell you that the link between Jolly West and Ruby and Clay Shaw is not what she thinks. There was other people that injected Ruby in jail. And
well, we know that what Ruby was given by West was some type of psychedelic because we have the video proof. We have the press conference afterwards where he's clearly tripping balls and out of his mind.
That's why I'm telling you that she has filled her own narrative into that story. She wasn't there. B, she has no way of knowing this. And I can tell you that Ruby got a bad batch of SV40 because guess who made that batch? It wasn't Oswald. It wasn't Judith Ferry Baker. It wasn't David Ferry. It was Mary Sherman by herself. And that's the reason Mary Sherman was killed, because she knew that Ruby got this mix. And if you understand about the cancer, this is the reason why this is the one part of Judith's story that I don't trust her on, because she was not a firsthand witness here. What happens, she goes back to Florida, and she's right. She did get a cush job, by way of her connections in Florida. But who is the person left back at Oxnard that has to make the concoction, who magically dies 6 months later, which is Sherman.
Sure.
Here's the key part of the story. Jack Ruby doesn't die like all the prisoners did from Angola. He actually lives longer. And you know the reason why? Because the batch wasn't as good that she made. And Judith believes, to this day, I know she believes this, that he got all these x-rays to start the process. She doesn't understand. The CIA and the mob knew that Jack got a bad batch. And that's the reason the x-rays were done. And she does not understand. She thinks that it was done to reduce his immune system, because remember, she's talking to you about the science side of it, but what she doesn't realize is what Sarah Stewart and Mary Sherman really found is that x-rays make the tumor virus more deadly, meaning non-native EMF is what does it. And they knew that this guy was not getting sick. And they were wondering what the hell goes on. By this time, Sherman's already dead. They have no way to go back to the well. And they have to do everything in their power to keep this fucking guy quiet. Because what Judith did say in that podcast is absolutely true. She made the link that Danny just totally shit the bed on, that Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald knew each other for a really long time. And when I told Danny in the podcast that Lee Harvey Oswald had grown up in New Orleans, he didn't know that. His famous guy, John Newman, that read a million pages, very fucking carefully left that part of the story out. And he had no idea that his uncle was linked to Carlos Marsala. That's actually how Oswald was thrown in this mix. Oswald was never the FBI guy. He was always the CIA asset. Who was the original FBI asset? That was fucking Oshner. And then when Oshner got roped into this issue with SV40 with the Cutter vaccine, that's when he became the CIA asset. And Judith does not know any of this story. Why? Because this predates her coming in. What she knows is those 3 or 4 months right before Kennedy gets taken out. She knows all of those things, and she's got documented proof on the ground. There's no question this lady is the only firsthand eyewitness that's left alive. The sad part is, me watching the video the other day, I mean, her mental capabilities are not what they were. I can tell you 5 years ago when I met her, she wasn't this flighty. But I do believe that Danny didn't help the interview because he didn't do any homework. And she was frustrated. You could tell when he talked to her. She's like, I've given you everything. Why are you questioning me about this? Like, in other words, I've already covered this. Why are we going back on the podcast and talking about this? Because honestly, the real links that you want to draw out here is, okay, now what's happened, tied to that Cutter event story, tied to what happened to her, and now what's going on here today. Much of the science that she held true, the one thing I would tell you, very carefully listen, what's the big black hole that I found in the MK Ultra box that she doesn't have? All the stories about Sarah Stewart. Sarah Stewart was a way bigger part of this story than Judith ever knows. Judith was blinded to most of Sarah's stuff. Sarah was the brains of the whole operation. She's the one that believed that they could get rid of the virus by radiating it, and turned out she was exactly wrong. The key part of the story also was when Ferry's found dead, part of her thesis, Jim Garrison finds at the murder scene.
Who's Ferry? Remind me.
David Ferry is the guy that was the Eastern Airlines pilot that was working for the CIA in the Bay of Pigs.
Don't they say that, isn't there a theory that him and Jack Valenti were the actual shooters?
Yeah, but that has no credibility at
Hmm.
all. But was Ferry in Dallas at that time? Did
Right.
Ferry have a big time motive to hate Kennedy? Yeah, I think Judith did a fabulous job
Hmm.
laying that out. Why? Because he had two, gay lovers that were killed in the Bay of
Yeah,
Pigs.
pigs. Well,
And
Judith's story is like so, it's such a great example of the compartmentalization and plausible deniability that the CIA
correct.
like operates with. She can be so aware of so many aspects, but so many other ones she doesn't, just like you were talking about
Well, that's why I
Stone,
was trying to tell you about DARPA, because guess what? This whole idea is where it comes from DARPA. It's about siloing not only science,
Mhm.
but also siloing information. This is a really a government idea that they got from General Gross. That's where it goes back to. And that's how you know you're involved in a military operation. Um, the problem, really is that there was parts of that story that I think are much more important for what's going on in our life right now, especially when you consider what's going on with Maha, what's going on with Bobby Kennedy. And I really truly think that, some of the stuff like that Ben Shapiro has put out recently about, oh, what does it matter? Well, we can turn around and say, well, what does it matter that we talk about the Holocaust? If we're going to use the same logic,
Mhm.
but to be honest with you, this is one of the problems since he is a mouthpiece for the Mossad now.
Mhm.
I think what he said actually is diesel fuel on the fire. Now, I will tell you my opinion based on what I've seen. I don't know what you've seen in your audience.
Yeah.
I think most people have been MK Ultra so much, and I think you're a young guy. I don't think that Americans that are alive today are madder than hell about Kennedy's assassination. Personally, I think they should be. Why?
That was the
Because
takeover. That was the coup.
that's exactly right. And if you want to know why you're living and why your parents have lived in the world they've lived in, that event is actually how it started. And I have to be honest with you, I'm not going to lie to you. I've been a little bit disappointed with the reaction of the American people. And
Hmm.
to be very honest with you, I was happy on Twitter after the JFK files went out because famously when I did the thing in October, I made the case to Danny that I can't fucking believe that you don't believe Israel's involved in this because
Right.
you're a guy that's got a podcast that's all into these conspiracy theories. And the level of evidence that's discoverable even before the files are released is off the chain. So when they come out and you read some of the stuff, here's my problem. Some of the guys that are on Twitter talking about, they're known anti-Semites. And
Right.
I try to explain to people, I'm not an anti-Semite. I'm an anti-Zionist. That means I'm an anti-royalist, Fabian, Council of Foreign Relations, Alan Dulles, his brother, and Richard Helms. And you need to realize that who are the guys that General Groves really cultivated? It's those guys, the loyalists to the crown. And the thing that really bothered me the other day is when we saw the rumors, and I don't know if they're true, that Trump gave an olive branch to the fucking King of England. Let me just tell you something. Out of everything that I've heard so far, that would be the most devastating information out of the JFK files when you really understand it, because that a lot of people, especially in my world in Bitcoin, they always like to lead with the financial stuff with the Rothschilds and Rockefellers.
Right.
I don't really go that way because to me, the most impressive part of this story is the biologic medical side. Because when you see that today in 2025, we are injecting children, 1 million children a month with this vaccine, the same vaccine that Oshner injected his two grandchildren with.
And
And
died.
no one seems to have a fucking problem with that. And that includes Bobby Kennedy, which is fucking stunning. You
Mhm.
want to know the truth? I said this on another podcast, but I'm going to say it to you straight to your face. If somebody would have told me on my bingo card before Trump gets elected that I would be less pissed off with Trump and more pissed off with Bobby, there's no chance I would say that. Maha has been an absolute fucking disaster. And Trump, to his credit, he's still pushing the decentralized money. He's still going that route. And he actually released the files, and he released enough of them for people to know that Israel was dirty as fuck.
Even though I'm super happy about the files getting released, I do think that Trump putting them out was a posture move, basically saying, hey, if I was controlled by Zionists, why would I give you this information that essentially,
Well,
implicates them in
you and
it?
I know the answer to that because he understands the MK Ultra program. Like when you have a Warburg shifted neocortex, I mean, look, you're young enough. I can say this to you, and I don't think you'll be pissed off. You guys have the attention span of a fucking gnat. You put a tweet out,
Mhm.
2 days later, everybody forgets, what even happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, which also, right now, do I believe was potentially a psyop. I
Mhm.
didn't think that in the beginning, but based on how things have unfolded, I'm actually starting to believe that more and more. And I have to tell you, what's going on the Maha side, like when Dan Weldon was asked to step back from the CDC, and then you see the girl that they just fucking put in,
Yeah.
who's a Biden Weffer, gummy smile, fucking DARPA person. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. And
Mhm.
here's the worst part. People, the MAGA people, I can't even blame them. I can't blame Trump. This was fucking handpicked by Bobby. I mean, you can't make this shit up, dude. So you've got to ask yourself, if he's that complicit, what have I been upset with? Probably the last 48 hours, what Bobby did to Nicole. I think not only did he lie to her, he wasted her money to get himself in a position of power. I don't know what his plan is. I mean, maybe he'll, continue on Casey and Callie Means program. Like, let's get fucking red dye out of Fruit Loops and improve the food, but that's not going to fucking solve
Right.
the problem of these million kids getting injected every month because this is on the fucking schedule. I mean, this bioweapons program is still full force from 1951 to 2025. And the savages out there, the people that listen to your podcast and when you and I did it the first time, I think y'all need to get fucking, you need to be very serious about understanding really what's going on. I mean, this is a bigger deal than what happened in 1770 to 1775.
I agree. There's not enough anger, and that's just more proof of the success of MK Ultra and all the distractions and the things that numb and make people complacent. If we didn't have that comfort in our lives, I think people would be a lot more willing to grab their pitchforks and go care of it in the town square, like probably needs to happen. I know you and I agree on that.
Well, I don't know how far when people are dumbed down by the MK Ultra programming, what's the thing that's going to push people to action to go read the Constitution and see what that Second Amendment really says,
Hmm.
and understand that 250 years ago we shot at our king for a 3% tax.
Right, on T.
And when you think about that and you go, look what's going on here, we just had an admission from our own government that intelligence agencies with a foreign power who had leverage over us because we took some of their Jewish scientists in Operation Paperclip to build a bomb in 2 years. That's the fucking leverage that they used to get their bomb and then kill one of our presidents who didn't want to fucking go along with the plan. I mean, and when, I think about, James Traficant, who used to be in the House of Representatives a long
Yep.
time ago, 2009, when he got on with Greta White's,
Talked
or
about how they're sending $30,000 to
yeah,
each Israeli citizen or
well, $30
something.
billion a year. That's
Yep.
what the price was then. But then you think about like some of the stuff that Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene have talked about now that they don't have APAC handlers. And you see that when, Mitch McConnell is getting ready to go out, Massey may run for that seat. And what does the Zionists come out? Oh, we're
They
going to do
primary him.
power to not let him run. Let me just tell you something. If you're a fucking savage, you really want to do something good, move to fucking Kentucky so that you can vote in that fucking senator election. Because I'll be honest with you, I think that it's high time before maybe we start shooting at the Kings this time, that people start realizing they got to fucking vote out, certain people. It doesn't fucking matter, if they're supporting your pet peeve thing. If they're dual passport people and their allegiance is to Israel, then it's gotta fucking stop.
Mhm.
This is getting in the business of we the people. And I have always believed that Bibi Netanyahu, whose name is not Bibi Netanyahu, just so you know that. He's got a Polish name, and that's done also by design. All the guys that run Israel have changed their names.
There's a
That's
Wikipedia page for it. Look up crypto Judaism.
yeah.
It
And I
exists for a reason.
I would just tell you that I think people need to understand that it started with the Bushes, and we've been running Israeli wars all the way through since really 1947. The USS Liberty in 67 turning a blind eye. And when they found out
Mhm.
the Russians were downloading all this information, back in those days, having evidence of genocide. I mean, look what's going on in Israel or Palestine, whatever you want to
Right.
call it now. I mean, it's the same fucking shit that went on in 67 with the USS Liberty. There, LBJ gave the okay to shoot our own people down. Right now, nobody gives two fucks what Israel's doing. I mean, that's also the effect of MK Ultra. You sit back. I mean, just think about how crazy this is. Then we had the USS Liberty. They had to shoot soldiers to make sure that story never came back. Unfortunately, or I should say, fortunately for us,
Fortunately.
unfortunate for them, some of them lived and are still pissed off to this day about it.
Mhm.
But we have fucking video right now on Twitter every day of what the fuck's going on there, and nobody gives two fucks
And
about it.
that was the same exact thing that they did, like with October 7th, the Liberty they were trying to blame on Egypt, just
Correct.
like
Well, it's
October
the
7th
same. You got to realize
and 9/11.
it's the same game plan because it was successful before. We can use it again. In fact, Judith made that point in the interview with Danny right at the end about the people that they used to recycle the shooters. Why did they do this? Because they wanted to keep recycling those shooters in, because it takes a lot to get a sharpshooter, that level that can take somebody out at a distance. Now we have even better, um, more talented people than we had back then. But let's be very, very clear here. The intelligence agencies of two countries took your president out. So, what makes you think that any president since that time has been playing for we the people? When you hear the criticism that we have selections and not elections, I have to be honest with you. That's now to the forefront. And, there'll be a lot of people on Twitter say, yeah, I told you so. But I don't think you really understand what this means. It means that you're a cow on the farm. You're already an economic slave. And they truly give two fucks about what your opinion really is. They're going to continue the game plan as long as the Patriots don't start loading their guns and
Mhm.
start going after the Kings in DC.
But they're
Now,
already preparing for that. I mean, they're using ICE to deport people on visas that criticize Israel. What they're going to start detaining citizens next that say the wrong thing. I mean,
well,
I think they know that that's coming. I think they know that.
I'm going to tell you though, I think the Joint Chiefs would be complicit on turning the military on our own people, because I told you the whole key with the change from SRI to Brain Health Initiative, that it's all been focused now. Intelligence is against us. We are now
Mhm.
the people that used to be in Central and South America. We are the Monroe Doctrine. Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
They're coming for us now, the taxpayer. And I don't believe the regular men and women of the military are going to turn bullets. I think one of the things that they've really miscalculated on is that if they escalate this to where I think it's going, um, either they have better intel about how good their weapons really work, the directed energy weapons, but I don't think they're going to work as good as they think on certain parts of the population. Do I
Mhm.
believe that they can take out New York, Chicago, LA, cities like that, Dallas? Yeah, I think that can happen, but I don't think the Southeast United States is ready to fucking bend the knee to anybody in Washington, D.C. In fact, that's where most of the guns in the United States are. And I can tell you that it's getting to the point where when people say to me, what's the angle of injecting our military and making our soldiers sicker? I think when you start to see what I'm saying here, they know that the military is not going to turn the guns on the people. So what are they going to do? I think their military is going to be weapons that are silent from above to take us all out. That's what I personally think is really the play here. And I don't even think the people that are involved in that game truly understand the five generation warfare that we're capable of right now. And when you think about this stuff getting released 75 years later, and you see people in the family who have had their family wiped out, specifically the Kennedys, and they are acting like they give two fucks about this. I got to be honest with you. The events of the last, I'm going to tell you, 2 months have totally changed my opinion about not only the election, the people that are in the government, and where we're headed. I think the people of the United States need to become very aware of truly what's going on. I
In
think
what way has your opinion changed? What do you believe now that
I
you
don't
didn't
trust
before?
Bobby Kennedy at all anymore. I don't trust most of the people in Trump's tight circle. Like,
Hmm.
for example, Kash Patel, Bondi. We haven't had one fucking arrest on anybody yet.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, you told us Pete Hegseth. I like him. I think he's probably better for the military, but the fact that he's hugely tied to the Zionist, it's a huge fucking problem for me.
Hmm.
It's even a bigger problem now. It wasn't a problem when he got confirmed. The fact that Matt Getz was, moved out of the AG. Do I think the big shoe that's going to drop? We're going to find out that all the USAID money was coming back to the rhinos and the DNC, so they were getting our money. This is a fucking war against us. And dude, this war's been going on since 1963, and none of us seem to fucking get it.
I think it's been going on longer than that. I mean, in 1947, just months before the creation of the State of Israel, is when Truman passed the National Security Act that founded the CIA, and I think that was probably meant to,
Yeah,
to
but that wasn't
bolster.
Truman that did it. You know who installed that? That was Groves on the way out of the military.
Right, Truman just signed it. Yeah, put it.
And
Yes.
you got to realize what happens there. The last good president before Kennedy, Eisenhower knew that Groves was a problem. People keep forgetting this part of the story. Eisenhower made sure fucking Groves left the military. And the reason why many people thought it was petty bullshit with him, Patton, and Marshall, pissed off that he was trying to take credit for World War II with dropping the bomb.
Hmm.
Dude, they knew he was fucking dangerous. But the crazy part is when they threw him out of the government, he got fucking more dangerous. They should have left him in the government, because it turned out when he got corporate money, oh, dude, he became super duper dangerous. Why? Because he had the technical know-how of what he learned in the Manhattan Project. And the truth be told, when you know this history really well, this is the reason why Eisenhower was so stunned that the Russians used their technology to go to space and put Sputnik up. We were wasting all our fucking time building information technology. We were building, the world of Google, Intel, Microsoft, Dell, what eventually becomes, X, Peter Thiel, all that.
Hmm.
This is the beginnings. This is the foundation level. And now they're there. They're this close away from doing this. I honestly think that we're at the point, if people don't really understand the 100,000-foot view, and that's part of the reason I told you before we came on that this podcast is probably going to be a little bit spicy for me. When I see a guy like Danny do this podcast with Judith and he's got the goods and he doesn't do the fucking homework, I start asking myself, is there an issue? We all know that we all get our media now from podcasts. We all get our nobody trusts the fucking print media anymore.
Mhm.
But when you start to see people who've made their living really talk about the conspiracies, then you get the fucking data, and then you're still shitting the bed and dribbling on yourself. I'll be honest with you, dude. I have a huge problem with that. I believe that the savages out there, when you got confirmation, and I'll say this to you, I'm okay that your audience may have thought I was full of shit and I was speaking hyperbole, but I gave you the details and told you why. I was the other firsthand person to this event. Judith was there before me, but Judith doesn't know all the stuff on the biology stuff that I seen come from this. Okay. And that stuff is the stuff that's more concerning to me, because when you understand what was done in the 50s and 60s and you see where we are now, you see there's an invasion going on and your government is taking your freedom away. Your government is King George today.
Mm-hmm.
And you are actively being programmed not to react by that Second Amendment. You don't even realize all the show with the school shootings, which is also MK Ultra stuff, all psyops. Nobody is willing to actually realize what's truly going on. And when you see outside the world that they're all rapidly going, like the story in Canada with Trudeau stepping down and Carney coming in, Carney is rapidly going to try to get the next place.
Carney's an Epstein client, probably an Epstein client. He's a friend of them.
But we also know what's happening in Europe. We know what's happening in the UK. Like, in other words, the game is ramping up quickly. We just had the EU people come out and said, look, the CBDC is now coming. What did I say in all the podcasts the last 2 years? That COVID was a compliance test for a coming economic reset. That's when you're already a cattle, but now you're not going to have the illusions of fucking freedom. You're going to be in fucking prison.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's fucking coming. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be in an electromagnetic prison. That's going to be just like CCOT. It's going to be built a little bit differently than CCOT, but it's going to have the exact same effect where the haves and the have-nots can control this. And they know if they take your regeneration paths away so that you can't reverse this Warburg metabolism on your brain, they're telling us, they're telegraphing us, we don't give two fucks what you think, because we can control what you think.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, I and a lot of people, I think that maybe the grand scheme of a lot of this is like depopulation or just killing everybody, but they need us. They need the, they need the cattle to slave.
No, we are the black people from the Civil War. They need us still to tend. And they don't need a lot of us. And they do know that a lot of the compliant, the people that really took the compliance well, they're going to be the ones that get cold first. But we, the strong, will be left to work the farm for them. Mm-hmm. That's really what I see. That's my diagnosis of the plan. That's been my diagnosis of the plan since 1991. Mm-hmm. Okay? So I'll tell you how long I have felt this way, and I've seen the layers of the onion come through. I thought this was my mistake. You could fool me once, fool me twice. But after seeing what Bobby Kennedy pulled with Nicole, dude,
don't you have some suspicion of Nicole because of Sergey Brin and her connections there? Don't you have some suspicion that maybe her funding him was just them working through her as a proxy to get someone that controlled like Bobby in place?
Yes, but I'm going to tell you, Bobby knows how to keep his brain working well. That's why they made a catastrophic mistake when you saw him putting methylene blue in that video when he was on the plane. It tells you that he knows something that a lot of other people don't know. I can tell you firsthand, Nicole doesn't know that.
Okay.
Nicole almost died a couple of months ago. If you want to know the reason why she's not part of what's going on in there, she just admitted the other day on a podcast that she almost died. I knew about that back in November. I actively talked to her. And that was not a nefarious takeout. I can tell you, It was by her own hand. It was by the 4 jabs that she took.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why she's pissed off is she's got a jab injured daughter and she is jab injured herself. She's one of the people they're attempting to call. What do I believe now about Bobby? How nefarious is this? He knew that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason why she was really picked. Why? Because she was a pocketbook who had Sergey Brin's money that he could use to get where he needed to get to. That's really what I feel now. And I've been holding my tongue for a long time. You know, a lot of people know that I was no fan of Trump, but I was a fan of Bobby's. Biggest fucking mistake that I've made in the last year. Biggest,
Mm-hmm.
not even close. And do I think Trump still might be redeemable because of the money side? Yeah. But I'm gonna tell you, I think if you don't fucking own Bitcoin, dude, you're fucked. You are so fucked what's coming. And it's gonna happen sooner than I think everybody anticipates. But the real sad part is I worry about those million babies every month that are getting popped with this jab. Like, we have to do something, because if you really understand what I'm saying, if we're going to fight a war against our government down the road, those babies right now, that's going to be our soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
We have to do something to save them, because what is the government effectively doing? If we take the people that will fight back against us away, they have nothing to fear.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing.
And they're creating the Delta and Epsilon classes from Brave New World as we speak. I mean, they've been doing that for
They've been
decades
doing it for
now.
a long time.
Yeah.
But the problem is you need to see it. Like, it's kind of like when I say stuff that I'm saying to you now, I know that for people who don't understand all the history and the science, that this sounds hyperbolic.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how much more I've got to tell you to tell you that I've really fucking put this together. And I want people to understand that we all need to come together. I still don't think the United States is a lost cause. Why? Because I have a little bit more faith in the savages than probably the government does.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to start pushing back at every level. Like, we should not fucking let them off the hook.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, anybody that right now, the people that I trust, there's only 3 people in Congress that I would keep, maybe 4. 2 guys from Kentucky, a girl from Georgia, and
I
maybe
can't think of any.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Massey's about the only one for me. I mean,
Well, Massey, Paul, and I think Marjorie Taylor Greene. But
Marjorie's okay because I know she doesn't get any APAC money, but her, unwavering support of Trump, I don't, she's a hard sell for me.
I understand why she feels the way she does. And I do think, believe it or not, I'm going to shock you when I tell you this, there are certain redeeming qualities about Trump. I just happen to think Trump is so stupid that he doesn't understand the things that you and I are talking about. Like, he has always been a businessman. He's always been a real estate guy. He's been very, how shall I say? I want to come off with some grace here. He knows that the Zionist helped him get into New York real estate. So I think that's the reason why he's always been the need. But I also, and this is where I give him a lot of credence, he truly was best friends with JFK Jr. And I think when Trump found out that Israel was involved in that, that's when he fucking drew the line with Bibi and said, no, fuck you. This is going to come out, and we'll see where America falls out on this.
You're talking about the JFK files?
And I really think that the Zionists believe, and I think they're right, that they have so much control over the U.S. Congress that what President Trump's fucking opinion is about Israel anymore doesn't fucking matter. Why? Because they have everybody in their pocket. Now, the real problem for the Zionists is the secular Jews in fucking Israel are about fed up with the Zionists in Israel.
And the ultra-Orthodox ones, too.
Correct. So this makes for, I would tell the patriots, the savages in the United States, you may have some interesting bedfellows in Israel that are willing to fight this battle. And I think what we all need to realize is that understand who your enemy is. Like the two things that I would tell people to do to listen to this podcast is kind of what I tell people when I'm talking about the science and not the politics. You need to go reread the Constitution, but then you also need to read The Art of War again. And I think savages, when you read The Art of War, you will see that the Zionists, the rhinos in the DNC, they are perfectly happy to rule over a country that's in ashes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell you that that is something that we need to use against them. And I think that we need to start playing wise ball. So why do I think the stuff that I teach people about mitochondrial medicine is so important? Because I got to get you out of a warbird shifted brain. Because I think there's a lot of you out there that actually can be woken up by this. I think the amount of information that has been delivered to your front store right now is more than enough for you to go, fuck. And I still think, even as bad as Danny's interview was with Judith, realize that she is the real deal. She's the last person standing from that event. And you need to go realize not only what they did to her, but she's got no fucking incentives for this story. She's had her whole life completely fucking ruined from the time she's 18 years old. And she's in her 80s now. She's getting ready to die. Why the fuck? What's her incentive right now?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe to support herself, as part of, one of the journalists that's involved in it, but realize all the journalists that, Danny has had on his podcast, all those guys, they kept pushing the fucking narrative away from Judith. And when Judith came on the scene in 99, who was the fucking people that pushed back the hardest on Judith's story? The fucking people that were, selling pictures of JFK's assassination and writing fucking books that weren't true, that only talked about the mob and the CIA.
Right.
They weren't willing to give up the fucking goods on the real story. And when you actually really listen to what Judith says, this is, I think, the most beautiful part of her story that you'll never get from her, because she doesn't understand. She's so fucking conflicted because she's in love with Oswald.
Right.
The key parts of the story of Ruby are what you need to realize. That's the fucking Jewish mob. That's the fucking Mossad.
Well, it was one of the files. I think I've got it right here. It says how Ruby was in Israel, like some, I don't know, maybe 3 months or something before the assassination.
You're right. And guess what? He was getting his marching orders, and exactly what he has to do. And you have to realize something. Judith also is very important in the story. Why? Because she makes the clear link that Ruby and Oswald were friends, and they were. And the club that she's talking about, when you go back and look at it, she talks about the Carousel Club that was in Dallas at the time. You're going to be shocked, but there is a Carousel Lounge and Bar in New Orleans, still to this day, in the Hotel Monteleone. Okay? So I want you to realize that this story is incredibly important. Like, if you are going to get madder than hell at your government and what's going on now, I think you need to start putting these pieces and parts together, because, one of the things that I don't think anybody's done except me is then linked it to Alan Fry, which is where the directed energy weapons come from. That's important in the MK Ultra story as it goes on. And then to realize that Robert O. Becker is the guy that is the regeneration guy, who actually is the antidote to all the things that they're doing in these programs. These are the silos that DARPA wants to make sure are apart. Remember, they never cancel Alan Fry, but they do cancel Becker. Why? Because they realize the best way to keep you in a Warburg shifted metabolism all over your body and in your brain, so you don't know what they're doing, is to make sure you never get the regeneration pathway locked down in your head.
Mm-hmm.
That's the real reason that he was taken out.
Mm-hmm.
That story, Whitney Webb, Judith Ferry Baker, Danny Jones, John Newman. they have no hope of telling. But that's the story that I've been telling for 20 years. And now that I've plugged it in into the narrative that you as a young man know about with the CIA and the Jewish mob, you begin to see all the pieces fit together.
Hmm. Hmm. While we're talking about Obecker, one of the things after our last conversation that really interested me was, Obecker's work and talking about, X-ray and EMF and, and all the dangers that these things pose to people. And I actually wasn't even researching anything about Obecker directly, but I was reading about, basically reading a book by this guy, Michael Aquino, who anybody in the conspiracy world is very familiar with from being wrapped up in the satanic panic in the Presidio military base, McMartin
Right.
preschool scandal. So Aquino, this, Navy guy who was also head of this satanic temple or something, got embroiled in a child abuse scandal. He wrote these, I guess you could call them books, but called Mind War, from psyop to mind war, and talking about the importance, actually his stance is the ethical importance of using psychological operations over, physical war and combat and stuff. And in this book that he wrote, From Psyop to Mind War, I wish I knew exactly. I think it came out in the maybe the late 80s, but it was around the time that the Presidio affair was going on, where he was
Yeah.
accused of molesting children.
You
In
need to
Mind
realize
War,
too, you put this together because, a lot of people in the audience, especially my people, are not going to know about this. I've never really talked about
sure,
it.
yeah,
But the Presidio event happens in 69. So let's talk about this. Alan Fry is 67, I should say 65 to about 69.
okay,
Becker is from 1957 to 1973. The Presidio affair is in the June of 69. So all of this is going on at the same time. And when you understand that these events all are linked in a very unusual way, not that I think understanding about the Presidio affair is important for the larger story that we've already laid out here. It just adds another layer
hmm
to the story to let you know this is not hyperbole.
hmm
Like there is a lot of discoverable events. So when you understand the Meyer Lansky story and how it relates to Jeffrey Epstein, and how it relates to Diddy, and how it relates to the music industry, and how it
right,
relates to the art world, how it relates to Prince Andrew and Jimmy Seville, and all the crazy bullshit that we have on with Frazzle Drip and Pizzagate and all that. This stuff is not crazy, and
hmm
this actually brings in the parts of the story that very few people want to talk about. This I'll give Danny a lot of credit. He was very, very tied in to understanding how Jolly West was big into Sirhan and also
hmm
into Manson family.
hmm
And if you listen to some of Manson's rants when he's in jail, I mean, dude, he talks, when he wasn't being controlled
oh
by
yeah,
the MK Ultra program, boy, does he have the story down pat.
he
He's
does.
like, the Israelis didn't want World War II to end, and they
Hmm.
wanted to continue and continue and continue. Yeah, that's a diary of a madman, but you just have to realize something that sometimes fucking crazy people, they still have fucking memories and they can get the truth out. And this is the reason why I'm going to tell you, they went from MK Ultra to SRI to Brain Health Initiative because guess what? The government can't have fucking people like Manson out there running his mouth. That's the reason why Mary Sherman was taken out. That's the reason why Ruby's taken out. That's the reason why many people in this story have been taken out.
My guess from reading this thing about Aquino, which jumping back to In the Mind War, he references directly. He's talking about extremely low frequency waves, ELF waves up to 100 hertz are more naturally occurring, but they can also be produced artificially, such as for the Navy's Project Sanguine for submarine communication. Well,
Correct.
that submarine was outside the Presidio base. It was happening at the exact same place that Aquino had his satanic temple. And I'm wondering if maybe the whole McMartin stuff, all the stuff with Aquino was a way to distract from the controversy that was going on around the Sanguine operation, and they were operating with these EMF waves and stuff. Maybe that was the more important story that the government needed to create this very extravagant, salacious thing with Aquino at the head of it. I don't know. I always thought Aquino was probably guilty, but reading that in his thing makes me kind of think again about it.
Well, I would tell you the my opinion, and I've said this in other podcasts. I don't think I did a good job in our last podcast, but I'll explain to you what I mean. There's always a utopian side of the DARPA story and then the dystopian side. So let's use the example of Sanguine. Becker was the one that was telling you the dystopian side, that it's a problem.
Mhm.
This other side, I think, is actually part of the randomized controlled clinical trials that they're doing. I believe all the unusual sexual behavior that was exhibited there, all that satanic stuff,
Yeah,
that is perfect conspiracy theory stuff. But
right.
do I believe that they can control the hypothalamus of people to do that? Is that a consequence of the change of a Warburg metabolism by utilizing silent weapons for silent wars? That's what I believe. I
Hmm.
believe you have seen that. Now, you have to realize, what's the utopian side? In 1973, when the U.S. Navy gets back, or hey, we want to build this antenna because we want to follow our Trident submarines all over the world, and we're going to use RF. It makes sense because huge wavelength, it goes right through the earth. So, in other words, the physics is plausible. It gives you deniable plausibility. But what's really going on, they already know, because of what Fry has done, that it opens your blood-brain barrier, it opens your gut barrier, it opens up even the barrier in your eye. They already know what the effects are. Becker doesn't know that they've already employed Alan Fry. He has no fucking earthly idea that this is going on at the same time. Why? Because one guy's working on the weapon, the other guy's working on regeneration for them. And you have to realize, when you have this plan to use electronic weapons against your own people, it only stands to reason that you need to know how to combat that. And it turns out the regeneration pathway is how you do it. And when you think about how they buried him from this story, and then, you've lived your whole life, when you think about 1969, Manson and all this pedo shit all the way through,
Hmm.
it's only grown, you know, in popularity. I mean, we see it in society. You've got to start asking your question: is Lady Gaga really right? Were people really born that way, or were they programmed that way?
Hmm.
And my belief, I think, is that they've been programmed that way because this is a consequence of the MK Ultra SRI Brain Health Initiative story. And this is going to continue to be used. Why? Because if you can dumb down your population
Hmm.
and make them not able to fight against you, this actually is a military goal. And if you
Right.
think about what the military's done, yeah, let's let all those that freak show in. It makes no sense when you think about it from the outside, if you have the perspective of what our military used to be. But where it makes total sense is when you realize the military is against us.
Mhm. I was
Got it?
talking to Joe Atwill, who's a fellow researcher and written some really good books, and we were talking about Tavistock and Hirschfield and all these different things, and that basically he thinks that a lot of people, people who are transgender, are making legitimate claims about their biology, that there actually has been something done to them biologically through whatever it is, vaccines, chemical, all the different, all the MK Ultra umbrella, that they're
Correct.
making legitimate claims about their biology, and it isn't a human rights conversation, whether these people have the same rights as everyone else, which obviously they do. It's a question of why they are that way, what it is that happened and affected them. And a lot of people don't know about Ted Kaczynski, who was a confirmed participant or victim, you should say, of MK Ultra. The thing that people don't know about him is that during that time he was at Harvard participating in the MK Ultra studies, he had about a year where he was consulting a doctor to have a sex change operation. He was having idealizations about becoming a woman, and apparently it was drove him so crazy, he felt so much shame for it, that's why he quit the trials, and that's when he kind of moved out and secluded himself from society. So I don't know. I think that's a very interesting part of his history that's often left out of the conversations.
Well, but you got to remember the reason why it's left out, because what are we doing in this podcast? We're kind of putting the bread on this sandwich that we did the first time. We're
Hmm.
beginning to explain to you truly what this silent war is all about. This silent war is about the elites in the United States taking over our country and doing it with our help. This is the ultimate Plato's allegory of the cave. But how are they doing it? What's the silent weapon for the silent war?
Mm-hmm.
We're using the electromagnetic spectrum to do it. And this all began, in very discoverable ways. I have the firm belief that you have to tell people the historical timeline and see the big thing. But this is the one thing about Judith that's always driven me crazy. She is so tied to the emotional side of this story, and she wants to get this timeline for her laid out because she believes that Lee Harvey Oswald was framed. We all know, like, there's nobody that's arguing with Judith Vary Baker anymore. We all know that. But what she doesn't seem to understand is that there's a way bigger story that's now developing. And that story is they're coming for us. Like, JFK was the first. What's going to happen, or what happened to JFK, is now happening to us, except they're not using acute lead toxicity to do it. Now they're using stuff you cannot even see to do it. And they're getting your friends and family to help them do it. That's the crazy part. And when you begin to see this story manifest, that's when people who truly do have total sovereignty of their mind, first principle thinkers, when they hear, like, the two podcasts you and I have done, like this one layered with the other one, because we've had 2 or 3 months now of actual history of this beginning, the first 62 days of this administration. None of what the rhetoric was when pre-election matches what we're seeing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to make sense of that if you're a first principles thinker.
Yeah.
You have to. And if you don't, if you still want to think that fucking Trump is playing 4D chess, you're a fucking idiot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. And you know what? I don't have time to argue with you on Twitter. I'm just going to ban you. What really, people have got really pissed off with me in the last couple of months. I just did a podcast with an Australian doctor who I fucking totally undressed. There was 2 doctors on the panel, anesthesiologist and this other guy who's what I would call a functional medicine type. And I'm like, look, dude. And the functional medicine guy tried to say, well, we're birds of a feather. I'm like, dude, we are so not birds of a feather. But the interesting thing is the anesthesiologist, he was. Why? Because he's been canceled. The other guy still thinks this is a story where, you can fix people with food and by giving them nutrients. I'm like, dude, when your environment is filled with trillions of fucking electromagnetic frequencies, that's why your food is bad. That's why your fucking ground sucks. That's why farming has been changed. You don't even fucking realize that you're in the battlefield. So why the fuck do I want to argue with you? You need people to truly understand what the bioweapon program was about, how it was put together, why they're using fake food, why they're using vaccines, why they're using supplements, because it's the atoms in those things that actually make it more likely for you to be programmed by using the radiation from afar. And they have been perfecting this since the times of Manson. That's what they've been doing, and they've been testing it on us. So here's the utopian side. Everybody right now thinks great things about Elon Musk if you're not a true lefty, right? Because he's doing Doge, he's doing freedom in the press. What's the nefarious part? He's the motherfucker that's putting all these satellites up there that are eventually going to do the bidding of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the elites that truly make us economic slaves.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the dystopian tide of it. And I'm going to tell you, who's the next Lee Harvey Oswald? Elon Musk.
I wouldn't be surprised. I've noticed that this whole this whole focus on food and health and all this stuff, everybody talking about seed oils and all this shit, it's really been pushed like over the past 5 or so years, really kind of post-COVID. I've noticed that everything's been diverted from, what we might have been talking about before to just food.
You have to realize the story for food is not a new story. It's an old one. I give a lot of credit to some of the biochemists, like the one biochemist I'm thinking about, because I usually hate biochemists, but I got to give a guy his due. His name
Hmm.
is John Yudkin. In the 60s, he's the guy that came out against Ansel Keys and said, look, everything that you're fucking saying, and you may not know this, Ansel Keys was also part of the DARPA program. That's the reason why you got the 7 country study and everything else. He was a real prize package. But anyway, Yudkin came out and said, look, it's not fucking sugar that's getting us fat. It was very clear. He said there's something else going on here and we need to study it. And that's not the narrative that was out there. The interesting thing is that gets further in the late 60s, early 70s with Atkins. Atkins comes out with the first versions of the ketogenic diet for, the population. And Atkins was right, but not for the reasons you want to know. Because what happens with a warbird shifted metabolism? Blood glucose and insulin goes up. So if you eat ketogenic, that actually prevents you from being programmed. Okay. It actually fights against it.
Hmm.
But at that time in the 60s and 70s, we didn't have electromagnetic weapons. Remember, there was no cell phone towers. There was no internet in everybody's house. There's nobody with a fucking iPhone and things in their ears all the time. So the amount of protection ketogenic diet could actually help you then. Now, because of the inverse square law, this shit's all around you. Like you have to do that and a whole lot more. You actually have to protect yourself from being irradiated. And that's what the people in the directed energy programs don't understand. The people that are targeted, because they don't understand the science, they don't understand the history of what's being done. You hear all these crazy stories about this people. Like I'll give you another perfect example since you and I've talked. I was stunned to find out that Danny did a podcast with Len Burr and Duncan before he died
Hmm.
on November of 2022. And here I'm sitting down with Danny in fucking October, and it's almost like he's acting like, well, I've never heard this before, but yet he's done a fucking podcast with these two guys before. And I'm telling you, when somebody sent this to me, I started to think to myself, you got to be fucking kidding me.
Have
I
you
mean,
talked to them before, Burr or Duncan? One
no,
of them died, I think, recently.
Duncan died. He
Yeah,
was dead somewhere, but Burr's the only guy that I know that got diagnosed with Fry syndrome,
their story is unbelievable.
which is now, known as Havana syndrome.
Hmm.
But you have to realize Alan Fry's the guy that fucking coined this term. He's the guy that did the DARPA research.
Hmm.
Uh, but what people don't really understand is when you see all the pieces and parts laid out in front of you, then you got to decide as the person that's out there. Like the people that we trust right now on social media, like in podcasting, I got to be honest with you. I don't fucking trust any of them.
Yeah.
Like, just got criticism the other day. You'll appreciate this. Like, Jack, why are you talking to these small Bulwark podcasts? Why are you talking to them? Because you're fucking more trustworthy than Joe Rogan
Hmm.
or Danny Jones. Why? I have questions about them all the time. Why? Because they're in bed with the elites.
They're controlled opposition.
Exactly. And I'm sitting here and I'm going, I don't know what to make of Danny because I don't think he's that smart on the science part. But for him to have Judith there and not to read the fucking book and know the background, it's just stunning. And then for him to have Len Bear and Duncan in the office, and then him to act like when I said Delgado figured out how to do this with
Hmm.
light, it's like shits the bed, like he's never heard this before.
Right.
But 2 years before this, these two fucking guys are on his podcast telling him the exact same story.
I'd like to know who Danny's dad is. I'd like to know a little bit more about his family.
To be honest with you, I don't. I gave Danny the opportunity to drop this story, and to his credit, I'll give him some credit. He's put Kevin on. He's put Alexis Cowan on. He
Mhm.
put Judith Very Baker on. But I almost want to give him the benefit of the doubt. But I have to tell you, dude, there's too much about this right now
Mhm.
that I'm just fucking scratching my head and going, I'm sorry. I just don't have any trust. And I think what's happened, even when he brought Callie on, he didn't go after Callie. And now I'll give you a perfect example.
He played
Cal-
interference for Callie almost when he had
well,
all three of you
but
on.
Callie said in that podcast, go back and listen to it. Oh, I don't want to have a place in government. I don't want to work with Bobby Kennedy. 5 days ago, Bobby Kennedy hired Callie. I mean, dude, you realize we're at March, the third week of March. So when I did that podcast with Callie, that's like the end of December of 24. We're not even fucking 3 months after that. So either I'm a really fucking smart guy, I'm a prophet, because all the people in psychological warfare, remember who Callie is, who he's linked to. His father is a Council of Foreign Relations member. What does that mean? That goes back to the Fabians. That's fucking Alan Dulles and his brother. Okay. And then the three places that he works for in the past, all are tied to psychological research. And they're dual passport Americans. I mean, bro. And then what's the big thing that just went on, to try to give you another layer to this cake? I told you they made Dan Weldon step back. Everybody knows what Weldon did when he was in Congress, that he was a doctor who actually questioned Big Pharma. And everybody wanted Trump to name Latipo, who's DeSantis guy. Well, who's the chief of staff for Trump? Susie Wiles. Susie Wiles fucking hates DeSantis. In fact, the reason DeSantis never runs against Trump is because fucking Susie Wiles takes DeSantis apart. So do you think they're going to put fucking Latipo for Weldon's seat? No. Who do they pick? They pick the fucking worst person you could ever imagine. And who gives the stamp of approval? I can't even blame Trump on this, because I don't think Trump fucking has a clue what's going on. I think this is Bobby Kennedy and Susie Wiles. That's what I think.
What do you think about Elon's role? Like I saw a video recently of his dad, Errol Musk, talking. It seems like there's some force behind Elon, even that's pulling the strings more so than Trump is.
It's the same force that is behind Peter Thiel. What is Peter Thiel? Peter Thiel is also a Lee Harvey Oswald. Who got them into government? Do you know who that was? John Poindexter. These guys were nobodies in PayPal Mafia. Poindexter is tied in with Wolfowitz, is tied in with, Rumsfeld. Just remember who signed the letter for JFK
to back off the Zionist.
Right?
Rumsfeld. Yep.
Rumsfeld signed it. Okay. Wolfowitz, also a dual passport guy in the Department of Defense. So Poindexter basically allows these guys into the Pentagon. They have been useful idiots. They are also silent. Now, I do know that Elon and Peter Thiel know what each other's doing, but they're on the same team. What is Peter Thiel's big play here? Peter Thiel's big play is the surveillance economy. Remember, he's the guy with Palantir. We used his technology to ID the faces of the last PSYOPs, which is the January 6th start. And January 6th is a story of the rhinos in the DNC, specifically Liz Cheney and Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, to fucking certify a fraudulent election to put Biden in. So when people see me go hard against Trump, realize I don't think fucking Trump is as bad as everybody does. Why? Because these motherfuckers have been trying to get rid of Trump for a really long period of time. There's something about Trump that scares the fuck out of the people in the military. And what I think it might be his friendship with JFK Jr. And they were truly afraid that their plan could maybe unravel over that big issue. Do I believe when Trump reached out to Bobby, do I believe Trump did that with good intentions? I do. And you saw how Cassidy, the senator from Louisiana, basically gave him an acid test. Like, if you want my vote, you're going to fucking bend at the knee. Well, we're seeing Bobby bend at the knee multiple times. We saw it in the measles outbreak in Texas, and we're seeing it now with this person that Weldon's replaced. And don't you find it interesting that they let Bobby through, but they didn't let Weldon through? They didn't let Getz through. So why? Getz is going to put these motherfuckers in jail when we find out that our taxpayer money was cycled through the useful idiot in Ukraine to come back here. Because that's truly where Pelosi, Warren's money, Chuck Schumer's money's come from. When you look at their salaries and how much money they have, that's our money. If you want to know the $37 trillion in debt, some of that money went to fighting the 20-year war in Afghanistan for the fucking idiots in the Joint Chiefs. But the real money has been paid out to Congress. Why? This is the perfect RICO case. This is your government fucking stealing from you while you guys are fucking dumbed down at Starbucks, watching your iPhone, watching Netflix and UFC and listening to Joe fucking Rogan.
Yep.
That's really what's going on. And I know that it's a huge fucking punch in the mouth for people that are going to listen to this podcast, but I got to be honest with you, Chief. I'm about fucking tired of it because it's blatantly obvious what's going on. And I don't understand why people aren't more in an uproar. You got all the pieces of the story now. They're out there. I mean, even people who voted for Trump, people in Maha are going, dude, we got you elected without Maha, without the crypto guys and Bitcoin and with the shit coins. Trump doesn't fucking get in.
One of the only things that gives me hope is that you see like this massive shift in the public consciousness. I think a massive part of it is because of, I think the Zionists didn't take into account that we live in a technological age now, and they forgot that all of their horrific genocidal crimes are going to be live streamed basically for the whole world
with you.
But don't you think that the world seeing that happen has helped?
You're seeing the USS Liberty every day on TV, and nobody's doing a fucking thing about it.
But more people are aware of it. More people care about it nowadays.
What good is your awareness if you're not doing anything about it?
Well, I mean, it's at least a first step towards action. People have to become aware of something in order to do something.
No.
So what does have to happen?
Okay, 1776, 3% tax. What did we do? Look what's fucking going on now. Do you realize what you're saying to me, dude? And you know why you're saying it to me? Now I'm going to give you your punch in the mouth because you're fucking dumbed down too by it. You don't realize we all are to some degree. And the thing is, until you get that awareness that you're in this fucking matrix, this matrix was built by the tech bros. Okay? They're the fucking wizard behind the screen. They're the ones that can switch on and switch off what you believe and what you don't believe. It's all controlled, and you have to realize they're the main architects. Here's the key thing. Nature has put so many fucking cool things inside that skull of yours that you still have the chance to turn that fucking signal off. And that's the reason why Becker's part of this story is the biggest fucking part of the story that nobody wants to talk about. Why? Because when you understand what he really wrote in his book, and you understand how you can turn off being targeted by your government so that you can remain decentralized, you can remain a good thinker, so that we can get on podcasts like this and have the discussion you and I are having. Consciousness is a spectrum just like autism. You can be fucking awake, but not fully realizing what's going on. If you don't believe me, I'm going to tell you that's what you saw in Danny's podcast and Judith. Judith is way more awake than Danny, but you can see her pilot light is going out. Her brain isn't as good. She's still telling you a story that was important in the 60s and 70s, but now you have to realize that that is another layer of the story that builds on what's happening now that you should fucking care about.
So how do you decentralize yourself and protect you against these things that are just invisibly surrounding us and affecting us at all times? Like 1776 had to have organization and coordination, and nowadays everybody's just doing their sports betting and porn, and they're all just retarded.
Do you understand why, though? Do you understand why?
I do, but how do you protect yourself?
This is the part that you and I haven't talked about yet. We haven't talked a lot of the science. I'm telling you. When you understand what the antidote is, first of all, you have to know your enemy and what they're doing to you. So that means you need to understand how the vaccine, how processed food, how supplements fit in to furthering their agenda. When you understand that you are a semiconductor factory, and if they can put any atoms in you that aren't supposed to be in there, that ruins the thermal efficiency of how your semiconductors work. So then you cannot think. Got it? That's the gist without getting into all the science. If you really want to parse Becker's work out, that's it. How do you maintain the default settings that Mother Nature gave you? You need UV and IR light to hydrate the melanin sheets inside your head, and then you become a decentralized savage. That is the distillation of Becker's work. And that is what everybody needs to do so that when you have your podcast in the future, You don't worry about fucking Rogan and all his shit. You keep talking to the people who are awake. Because guess what? If you're doing the right thing, you're a tuning fork, my friend. There's a reason I'm talking to you for a second time. There's a reason I would never talk to Rogan. You're beginning to understand why. Because I'm looking for tuning forks that fucking can think, that aren't controlled. That's the key. I thought Danny was one of those guys, but I was fucking wrong, dead wrong. And am I pissed off about it? Yes, I am. The reason why is I don't think that we have as much time as maybe your generation thinks. Why? Because you're all nihilistic. You're all like, it doesn't fucking matter who we vote for. No, it actually does. But you have to understand, elections have consequences. And when you put people in that aren't supposed to be in, who aren't playing ball with these motherfuckers, it makes their job way more difficult.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the truth. And the thing is, we need en masse. Like, I can tell you the two-party system is one of the biggest weapons that they're using against us.
Of course.
That's the key. And the thing is, when you become a first principle thinker and decentralized, you'll begin to realize, say, okay, I'm a Democrat, but now I understand what my Republican friend is saying. Like, I'll give you a perfect example, because this is the example I would give you. If you understood my relationship with Nicole, she is a total fucking left-wing liberal, married to Sergey Brin. You can imagine she's my fucking mortal enemy 2.5 years ago. And dude, the first meeting I had with her, if you could have listened to what I said to her, you think I'm bad on Twitter? Dude, I was brutal to her. But what didn't I realize? Because the punch in the mouth that she got from Sergey, that she got from her daughter Echo because of Sergey, and she started to realize what was really going on, and just realize something. She still believed their bullshit to take 4 fucking jabs. Now she knows her life's at risk. But guess what she did? She did the craziest thing ever. She proved to me that she's like, I now realize I made a mistake of being a left-wing liberal and not questioning things. You can still be a left-wing liberal, but when you understand that freedom and sovereignty are at risk, then we should be on the same team. Because guess what? The question that you posed earlier, in 1770 to 1775, because they were all first principle thinkers, they had nobody controlling their mind. That's the reason that they organized. The reason we don't organize now is because we're too fucking busy watching Netflix and Joe Rogan and Danny Jones, because we're not thinking. We're worried about who the fucking Titans are going to pick first in the draft, or we're worried about who's the UFC fight on Friday night. We're worrying about things that are superfluous, why these motherfuckers take our sovereignty away. So guess what? When I can teach savages truly why DARPA canceled Becker, and I can get that message out, because remember, I've been doing that for 20 years. That's the stuff that I'm the most proud of. This stuff that I've been talking about with you guys for the last 2 years, it's because now their agenda is pushed up. And COVID was that wake-up call. I knew what was coming. I knew that SV40 was going to be in the jabs. I told people it was coming, and y'all still didn't fucking believe me. I don't know how many more times I have to be right to wake the savages up. And I told you, I'm not looking for 1 million, 2 million, 4 million people. I'm looking for 150,000 people that say, fuck this. We're not doing this shit anymore. In other words, you're going to be like those people in England a long time ago, where the word sabotage comes from. Sabots. They were wooden shoes that they threw in the clock gears. Each savage out there has to be a fucking sabot. We have to stop the globalist agenda at every level. I don't care if that means you're not going to buy their products. You're not going to consume their fucking media. You're going to tell fucking Joe Rogan, fuck you, because you need to. Just because he does some good things, remember whose team he's on. That's the point I want to make. And I know what I'm saying. It sounds fucking crazy until you put the pieces together. Let me just tell you, you live now in a world in 2025 where all those pieces, everything I've told you is discoverable. You have a duty now to fact check me.
Mhm.
That's the reason why I was so hard on Whitney Webb. The reason why I was so hard on Mark Godwin, the people that supported Danny, because they were missing the biggest fucking piece of the story, the biology side. And that's the side that's actually going to drag our asses out of this. If you want to know the
Mhm.
truth, the guy in Plato's allegory of the cave was the guy in the fucking sun. Don't forget that story. That story is sitting in the fucking 28th latitude, looking straight at you right now. The Sphinx looks to the east with it's grounded. That's the part of the regeneration program that DARPA doesn't want you to know. Because what does that do? It reverses a Warburg metabolism everywhere in your body.
The thing that scares me right now is I think that we're reaching like kind of a critical mass place, and data is the new oil, and we know that the data barons, the Musks and the Teals and stuff, they own all the data, and they see what's happening, and they see the public consciousness. They see people talking about things that didn't used to be in the public discourse,
You
and I
got to
think.
remember something. They're arrogant because you know why? They know how good their electromagnetic technology is.
Mhm.
See, that's what you don't understand. I still, when you say that to me, it tells me you don't
So
understand.
you don't think they're worried at all? You think they're.
Nope. I'm telling you, proof positive.
Mhm.
Since the stuff between the CIA and JFK
Mhm.
and Israel came out, fucking crickets. Do you see anybody upset? Look what fucking Ben Shapiro just said. You know the only thing you see now? Now people listen to Candace Owens more than they listen to Ben Shapiro. Okay, big fucking whoop.
Mhm.
But nobody's fucking upset that 532 people in Congress are being fucking paid off by the Zionists in Israel
Mhm.
to fucking do their bidding.
I think that's where me and you disagree a little bit, is I think that in the past, the people that, if something like the JFK files came out, the people who would be upset about it would have been the people that were already upset about it. But at least for me, I do see like an increase in the amount of people that are talking about these things, that even have awareness of it. I'll get random messages from old friends and stuff, people sending me clips of things, and I'm like, yeah,
I guess
I'm
what I'm saying
excited
to
that
you,
they're seeing these things now,
I
but.
guess what I'm saying to you, and I want to be clear. I understand that you have to be aware of the problem first, but what I'm saying to you, the data is overwhelming now.
Mhm.
We're past the point of awareness. It's time to start fucking doing something. The same criticism I have for Kash Patel and Bondi is the same one I'm having for you.
Mhm.
Like, I love that you're doing these podcasts. I love that you're putting it out there. But you have to realize where I am. I'm older than you, and I've seen this fucking thing unfold, and I'm fucking fed up. Like, I am fed up that nobody gives two fucks what's happening to this country.
So short of violence, what do we do? Do we run for office locally? What's the.
That's the part we're at now. I think we need to motivate your age group
Mhm.
to realize that elections do matter. That's why they're stealing them. If you want to
Mhm.
know the truth, you want to know what J6 should really be a lesson of? That it fucking did matter.
Mhm.
But you guys don't get that. And to me, it's fucking unbelievable. I live in a country where literally a fucking murderous regime was taken out. And now the fucking people here are happy. Don't fucking tell me elections don't have consequences, because they do. The problem is the United States is in a far worse position than most of you want to admit. Why? Because you're fucking drunk on your own bag. You think you're the king. You're not. You're a fucking cow. You're on a pasture and you just don't know that you're fenced in. Why? Because the fence is made out of light you can't fucking see.
So how do we break the fence, man?
Well, I'm kind of hoping that's why I'm doing the second podcast with you. I'm to be honest with you, I hope this stimulates conversation amongst the savages. Because do I think, when Massey says, "Hey, I'm going to run," that look, I'm not kidding you when I tell you this. I want people to move to fucking Kentucky and make sure he wins. That's what I'm telling you.
Mhm.
That's kind of shit that Paul Revere would do. Okay. That's what we need to start to think about. And yes, it's one guy in, but that one guy will matter because that bully pulpit. Remember what is going on in Israel right now? They are trying to silence every single fucking Arab mouth by wiping them off the planet. They're doing the same thing in the US Congress. The only difference is they're not lighting the Congress up. They've done it with money. And the craziest fucking part, they've done it with our own money. They put us in debt doing it.
Mhm.
Like, this is Plato's alligator cave, like
Yeah.
5G. I mean, it is, and I hate to give him credit, but this is a fucking brilliant plan. Absolutely brilliant plan. And the problem is, to really understand what's being done to you, you do need to know the science. And I'm not going to lie to you. The science, like, you really want to understand it, then I got to split your head open. You're not going to like Uncle Jack then. You think you don't like me now. Boy, you're really going to fucking hate my guts. But I can promise you, I can break it down very simply. Eat like a great white shark and live like the Sphinx. You do that, you'll get UV and IR in your life, and you'll hydrate your melanin sheets, and you'll be able to think well. You'll be able to understand truly what the fucking they're doing to you. And you'll be able to do it long enough so that we can organize, so that people can listen to your podcast. They can listen to Alexis' podcast. They can listen to Kevin McKiernan. They can get out there and listen to John Bedoin. They can get out there and listen to Mary Taliban. Hopefully, if Nicole's still alive, listen to her and with the things that she's doing.
You really think her life like is in jeopardy at this point?
Oh, yeah. No doubt about it. Absolutely no question about it. Let me tell you something. Anybody, what we now know, if you took one Pfizer jab, you have a 12x chance of dying. You know what it's like if you take 2, 3, 4? Dude,
Yeah.
it's logarithmic.
Just compounded. Yeah.
You took 4. So I know, just remember at the end of that Danny Jones podcast that I did with Mary, I showed you one slide. The one slide was of SV40 from the Qatar event to current times. What did it show when COVID started and people started getting injected? The line was asymptotic, went up. What's the difference? What did they really find out? The original polio contamination, which was a mistake, was the full genome. This is only the fucking promoter. Turns out the promoter is more fucking deadly than the full genome.
Was
That's
the whole point of getting polio vaccine out there to introduce SV40?
no. The whole issue back then is what I try to explain to people in multiple podcasts. That truly was an error by Jonas Salk. Why? Because it was really difficult to grow his vaccine on human cells. So what did they do? They used primates, and they did. Remember, that's a pre-molecular biology time. This is 1951. There was DNA is discovered in 53. So they have no fucking earthly idea what they're doing. And this is a part of the story that I think really Judith is kind of fucking got wrong. When they hire Mary Sherman and Stewart to come in, those two ladies also don't fully know the true scope. They're the best that we have in the world, but they don't understand. And what does Mary Sherman find? She finds that electromagnetic radiation makes SV40 worse. Okay, not better. And what happens then? That's when the story goes from, oh, we're going to try to fix this, to now we're going to use it, because they found out what was really the whole bioweapons program in New Orleans all about. We can't fix this. Once we let the genie out of the bottle, we don't know what to do to fix it. Just remember, now we have all the cool molecular tools that, Kevin McKiernan talks about on every time he does a podcast. Nobody's been able to get it out. And remember what also I tried to tell people, why didn't Philip Buchholz or Kevin McKiernan know about any of this story? Like, if you look at Kevin's tweet from when Judith went on Danny, I'm telling you, that tweet, that's part of the reason why I think he should win a Nobel Prize. He didn't fucking know any of this. Why? Because it was never published in the literature. So can I get on Kevin's case? Can I get on a molecular biologist's case? Can I get on Buchholz's case? No, I know why they don't know it, because it was fucking whitewashed from history. But guess what? Why did I know about it? Because I fucking lived it in my residency. I saw all the pieces and parts. I used the fucking goddamn machine that were used in the experiments.
Mm-hmm.
Treat brain tumors. And the people that got the brain tumors, guess where they got them from? SV40.
You're talking about the LINAC. The LINAC is that machine?
Absolutely. And the thing is, when you realize how this has now been weaponized in centralized healthcare, the number one profitable thing in every hospital in every city is cancer. You think these motherfuckers are going to stop treating that? I mean,
course
I'll
not.
give you a perfect example. Let's talk about Mary Taliban. She's had this war with Houston Methodist. What's the war? Houston Methodist makes, it's one of the biggest hospital systems in the world, makes as much money in cancer as MD Anderson does. Do you understand the whole game here? Cancer is a huge business. They don't want to solve it. It's like a fucking wallet bobsy for humanity. And if you don't look at that data, that slide that I showed at the end of that
Mhm.
podcast, you don't really understand the magnitude. And what happens? Medical spending goes up and up and up all the time. And we get less and less return on equity back. Why?
Yeah.
Because the things that are making us sick, which is the electromagnetic pollution, you know, oh, just about now, SV40s everywhere. Why? Because it went through the blood supply. It's now in vaccines. Don't think that polio was the only vaccine that fucking SV40 was in. I got some bad news for you. There's evidence that it's even in the Gardasil vaccine. Several other vaccines, I think there's pretty good evidence that it's out there. Um, there's people that have been trying to expose that. But you know what the problem is, why it's not been studied? Because the original story that I told you, because nobody knew the real story about what happened with polio because it was whitewashed and they buried Eddie. Remember, Bernice Eddie's the first doctor canceled by DARPA, the first one. And she's canceled in the pre-DARPA times. Who cancels her? The NIH, ONI, CIA, OSS guys, all of those fucking guys. Who is active at that time? George Herbert Bush. Got it? Who's running? Who's the vice president at that time that's trying to hide all this? Richard M. Nixon. He's the vice president for 8 years. These people all knew about this story. This story has been in the government for, I can't tell you how long. You want to know the reason why Richard Nixon gets popped by the CIA? It's over this fucking story. That whole Watergate thing is nothing. I mean, if you think about what Nixon did in 73 to the DNC, how about fucking what Obama did, which is fucking literally 1,000 times worse? But nothing happened to him. Do you know why? Because he was playing on the right team. He wasn't going to turn state's evidence against the people that did the first fucking bioweapons lab, which is what was happening. And who did they replace Nixon with? A guy that sat on the Warren Commission. Imagine that.
Yeah. And
Anybody
Prescott Bush
questioning this
was a
narrative,
big supporter of Germany, right, during the war. I mean, along with the Dulles brothers were, and I think even the Rockefellers. And I've read some places that that's kind of where Rockefellers, Dulles came under basically blackmail for their support of the Third Reich. And the Rothschilds and Reuben
well, because
Shillawa and Mossad and stuff
you have to
essentially used
realize
that
that
against them.
that's why I'm telling you, when I use the word Zionist, it doesn't mean Jews. It actually
Hmm.
is the British military, the Tavistock people, the
Hmm.
MI6, all that. This was a British plan that goes all the way back to a Lloydial title to try to get Russia and the United States back. That's what the Council of Foreign Relations, how it began. It's a pre-runner for the League of Nations that happens at the Treaty of Versailles. Most Americans don't even know that Allen Dulles and his brother were
Right.
actually architects of the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles was to guarantee another war. And if you really want to know the truth, because I know people don't like this story, Hitler and the Third Reich are a fucking British supported psyops. That's what it is. And I know when Martyr Made comes out and does his takedown of this science from an academic side, again, this is another thing that Uncle Jack will be a prophet on, because I know a lot of people will, take the Howard Lutnick and the Ben Shapiro side of this. Just what happened to you with you finding out that I was right about Israel when the files come out, you're going to find out I was right about this.
Mhm.
This is a fucking story of British imperialism taking Palestine from the Ottoman Empire after World
Mhm.
War One and the Rothschilds and
Balfour Declaration.
got a Balfour Declaration, man, November 2nd, 1917. That is the fucking key.
It seems like both those wars, this is very controversial, but it sounds like the main purpose of them was to establish a Zionist state in Palestine.
Well, the
To,
reason why is what they wanted to do is they wanted to put all the Jews in one place and then fulfill the prophecy that's in the Talmud.
Mhm.
That's really what this is all about. And then the the big play for the Rothschilds and the royal family is to get back what they lost from Russia, in the Bolshevik Revolution, and then get it back what they lost when we shot at the fucking king for 3% tax and we wanted to, worship God the way we wanted to. Dude, they have never gotten over this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, the recent admonitions that, Trump and fucking King Charles are having an olive branch. Just so you guys remember, the first administration of Trump, the first time that those two guys ever fucking met, King Charles, at that time he was Prince Charles, he wouldn't even fucking shake Trump's hand. So I'm just going to tell you, you want to know what Butler was really about? Think about that. And now they're reaching out because you know what I think they're worried about? I think many of the things that they're concerned about, they're falling apart. Some of those things are falling apart. I don't think Trump as bad as some people may think when they look at this podcast. Do I fucking trust him? No, I don't trust any fucking politician. But I'm just going to tell you that I am hellaciously disappointed and pissed off with Bobby Kennedy. I think he's turned out to be far more nefarious than I ever envisioned.
But why Bobby more than Trump? I mean, Trump is higher up the totem pole. He sold us all
ran
out.
For president. He ran for president on Maha. Okay? Then he decides, okay, I'm going to join Trump. Then he gets in. Then when he gets in, everything that he stands for completely goes by the wayside. Just remember, let me tell you how nefarious this is. Let me explain this to you, because I don't think you understand it. And I want to really give you the punch in the mouth. He picks Nicole, okay? He knows Nicole's history, okay? He uses her money. Then he drops out, joins Trump. First thing that happens when Bobby's in, we have this measles outbreak. He starts talking about the MMR. Do you know how Echo got fucking autism? From the MMR vaccine. You know what a fucking slap in the face that is? And he spent all of her money just to become fucking HHS. And then what does he do? He has to genuflect to the douchebag from my state in Louisiana. And then what happens? Then we magically lose Getz. We magically lose Weldon. Why? Because the fucking real architects here, the bankers and Big Pharma, they're not going to let the bioweapons program go away. Because that's the key to keeping you all on the farm with this invisible war, with the invisible weapons, so that you keep fucking watching Netflix, talking about White Lotus, and listening to fucking Joe Rogan's nonsense.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's totally right. Without that, without the MK Ultra tech billionaires in their projects, nobody would sit around and take it in the ass anymore.
Well, that's the way I look at it. And I mean, I think you could probably understand, or hopefully people will understand when they watch this and they watch our first episode, why I'm a little bit fucking salty. I mean, if you want to know the truth, I've been salty for a long time. I've had to sit on this for 30 years to know this stuff. And did I think that COVID was the coming out party? You have to realize, before you ever heard of me, my friend, I had Judith Very Baker in my house in front of 120 of my clients. And I told them, this lady's for real. Now, I also told them that there's other parts of the story that you're going to hear come out that you are not going to believe.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, at that event, from that event, I took people to the Covington Primate Center. That's 20 minutes away from my clinic. And I made them drive up to the front gate. And Army Rangers came out. I said, did you know that there's a bioweapons lab 20 minutes from my clinic? And do you know that that bioweapons lab used to be in fucking LSU in Tulane? Do you know that I know about that lab because I was involved in that lab when I was a resident? My fucking anesthesiologist dad was the first head of that fucking center.
Was he the Benai Barith guy you told me about last night or last time?
Benai Barith guy is the guy that was Theodore Silbert. He's the guy that taught me about banking. This guy's name was Riopeld. Riopeld was, his son was my anesthesiologist when I was at Charity Hospital when JFK was being filmed. His dad was the guy who was the first forerunner. When MK Ultra and the primate stuff left Tulane and LSU, it was moved up to Covington. What else was going on in Covington? That's where David Ferry trained Lee Harvey Oswald for the Bay of Pigs invasion. Same fucking place across from Lake Pontchartrain. This is all where my clinic is today in the United States. So now I want you to do a hard stop and think about what we've been talking about. You understand now why Kennedy, a gastroenterologist from Louisiana, may know a little bit about this fucking story that you guys don't know. Mm-hmm. And may the other clown, Kennedy, also from the state of Louisiana. Just remember the story that I told you a long time ago. Who are the keys to getting that fucking money for the Lynn Act? The delegation from Louisiana. They were the strongest, most powerful people on the Democrat side in the 1960s. They controlled the purse strings of the House Ways and Means Committee. That's what Hale Boggs did. That's what UEP Long's son, who was the senator at the time. If you want to know the real power of Louisiana as a small little state, they have been complicit with the industrial military complex all the way from the beginning. That's why it's a third world country inside the United States. That's the truth.
One of the biggest thing that people have reached out to me about since our first interview was wanting to know more about the documents that you've said you found, I guess, in the basement of Tulane. Mm-hmm. Have you ever thought about publishing those, or can you tell us more about what you found in those exactly related to MK Ultra?
They were the full copy of what MK Ultra was really doing. And the interesting part, it was broken into 3 different rooms. The first room was in Tulane's main old medical school building that the ladies in Charity Hospital, people who trained with me or ever trained in Charity Hospital will understand this. If you are into conspiracy theories, there was stories long time ago that Charity Hospital, because it was built in the 1700s, had tunnels that went all the way into the French Quarter. Like, in other words, you could get from the hospital all the way there. And I always thought that was fucking crazy bullshit. But I heard about it when I was a first-year resident. So when this stuff started going down, when I was a first year, and I talked to Virginia Garrison, I went to the ladies in the what we call now medical charts. Because remember, we didn't have any computers at that time. Mm-hmm. We had a room that, I mean, when I tell you, is like fucking charts to the max that were like 100 years old. Back in those days, there was no way to search this on a computer. So you had to fucking go through all this stuff. So I said to the ladies that ran that room, I said, look, I'm interested in finding stuff from the 1960s and 1970s. And they told me, baby, this stuff's not here. We got the stuff for the last 20 years here for patients that would be in this hospital. She goes, you got to go to Tulane. So I had to take a tunnel that connected Charity Hospital to Tulane. I get over there and I talk to security guards and I said, look, the ladies over there tell me that I can get in here. And they're asking me what I'm doing. I'm like, well, I'm doing a paper. And I told them it was about bone metabolism and I needed to find some information out. This was about Becker's work. Of course, that's my front. So the guys opened this fucking room up. And when I tell you, it smelled like all holy hell. These are all crusty, nasty charts. And I'm going through the different things. The thing that saved my ass is that they were chronologically ordered in terms of the boxes. So I get into the 60s and I'm looking specifically for the names that were involved in Tulane neurology and neurosurgery, because I know that's my clue that this was going on. How did I get that information? From John Oshner, who's Alton Oshner's son, who's the cardiovascular surgeon. And remember, Alton Oshner, this is again something that Judith confirmed in her podcast with Danny. He first was the head of Tulane surgery at this fucking time. Okay. He's thrown out of Tulane because he's a fucking right-wing crazy guy that's taking care of the dictators, anti-communist. That's really why he gets thrown out. So I'm going down there and I find the 1940s. I find the 1950s. I see signatures of Alton Oshner on these fucking charts. So I know I'm in the right place. And then I find another room in the back that's got all of these things that say Tulane neurosurgery, Tulane neurology. I open this up and there's fucking MK Ultra files everywhere. Sidney Gottlieb's name's there. The shit that went down with the U.S. Navy, with the St. Louis pilots,
Hmm.
stuff at Washington University, like the story about Roger Bannister. I did not know that he was fucking killed from a heart attack until I looked in that box, and it turns out he was fucking killed by the gun that shows up in the church commission later. What Richard Helms does not know, and this is what I believe to be true.
Hmm.
I believe that Alton Ochsner and Clay Shaw stored these documents in Tulane so that nobody would ever fucking find them. And Richard Helms never knew they existed. Remember where the trial went on, my friend, for Clay Shaw? In New Orleans. And Alton Ochsner never gets brought up. It's very convenient that it wouldn't be at his hospital. Why? Because you would think that if Jim Garrison would have put out, say, an arrest warrant for him, there would have been discovery not only in his house, but every place he's ever been. They would have never looked in
Hmm.
fucking Tulane. And I found the treasure trove. What led me there is the security guards, when I got finished looking at all this stuff, they said, by the way, Doc, there's another room. And I'm like, where's the room? This is the crazy part. This is when I began to realize the stories about charity were true. You have to know where I am right now. I am in the basement on Tulane Avenue in New Orleans. He says, if you walk down this tunnel here, and this fucking door is like, I thought it was bolted shut. He says, this is a tunnel that gets you underneath Canal Street. You can go into the Tulane University School of Tropical Medicine. He goes, there's another room down there that's got stuff in it that nobody knows what's in there. I said, can you get me in that room? So guess what I do? I go through the fucking tunnel, and this is a long tunnel, fucking pitch black. And the guys bring me there with a flashlight, and they open this fucking door. And dude, it's the mother lode. I get pictures of the monkeys with the fucking wires going in their brain. I get the stuff from Delgado when he's in Spain, his travels to Mexico. There's stuff in there that Judith didn't know about Sarah Stewart. There's stuff in there about Mary Sherman. There's stuff in there about the NOPD that was on the payroll of fucking Roger Bannister. That's the reason why the NOPD helped the fucking CIA move Mary Sherman's body to her apartment. That fucking information was there. That's how I knew that Judith wasn't full of shit.
Jesus Christ.
So guess what happens? I always thought that this stuff would be there. Little did I know in 2005, we'd have fucking Hurricane Katrina. What's the problem in New Orleans? If you know anything, it's below sea level. So when that fucking hurricane comes, the whole city is flooded. The reason why Charity Hospital is closed today, the only reason, is because of that hurricane.
Jesus Christ. What were all these tunnels for?
Well, this is, I don't know the answer to that, but this
Mhm.
is what I was told when I was a resident. Back in the day, those tunnels went all the way to the French Quarter. And the French Quarter, if you know anything about where I'm telling you, this is on Canal Street. If you go straight down Canal Street, that's the major street of this side of the French Quarter. The other side is West Esplanade. So apparently back in the day in the 1700s, you'd have guys get off the ship at the wharf on Decatur Street, spend time in there, get their sexually transmitted diseases, and then they bring them under the cover of darkness into the hospital. So this was actually a clandestine thing to keep things quiet. They would bring, booze. They would bring all different things that they could get into the United States illegally.
Mhm.
These things were built in the 1750s all the way through the 1850s. And remember, New Orleans first started out as a Spanish colony, then it became a French colony. So these tunnels were all built underneath the city. The problem is, if you know anything about New Orleans, it's a really bad place to put fucking tunnels because the city is 6 feet under sea level. And if you've ever been to the French Quarter, there's this crazy thing. If you stand at Jackson Square, that's where the church is, and you look at the statue that's there, and you stand on the levee, you will see that the city looks like it's down and the level of the Mississippi River is here. It's the craziest place you'll ever stand anywhere in the United States, because when you look at it, it makes you understand that basically New Orleans is a dish. And that's the vantage point you get. The problem is the mistake that I made. This is in a time that we didn't have cell phones that had cameras. And I was brought down there to do research on bone metabolism. The stuff that I found though was fucking unbelievable. And I knew that I was in trouble because when I went down there, I got called by two of the neurosurgeons in my department wanting to know why I went where I went. Why? Because security called them and told them that I was down there. Now, I haven't told anybody this part of the story, but one of the neurosurgeons that admonished me, remember that story that I told in Danny Jones' podcast about the little girl that I told the doctor to get out?
I think so, yeah.
Same fucking doctor. And he had a DARPA contract with the military studying how traumatic brain injury and gunshot wounds can be treated. How do you like that?
Jesus Christ.
I'm
So
not kidding.
did you save documents? Did you take things from there?
I couldn't take anything.
So it's all
Couldn't believe it.
destroyed now
Yeah.
after
Well, I
Katrina.
mean, I don't even know if the tunnel system after the, I've tried to get back into charity. My nurse has gotten back into charity. Why? Because they were selling pieces and parts of the hospital after, a lot of people who trained there wanted, like I wanted my call room door.
Sure.
Uh, Unfortunately, never got it, but they're talking about turning it in to condominiums now. And I often wonder when they do this, has anybody, sealed up any of those tunnels? Are they still open? Because the way New Orleans is now, if somebody really knew about that tunnel system in the city government, I would imagine they would keep that extremely quiet. Why? Because believe it or not, City Hall is right behind Charity Hospital. So that tunnel system,
Hmm.
it wouldn't surprise me if that's still being used in indiscriminate ways, especially considering who the mayor of New Orleans is now and how nefarious that she really is.
Hmm.
There's a lot of rumors out, about some of the things that you've already talked about, with the nasty pedo rings
Yeah,
and things like that, that shit is still going on. And I think most people know that, New Orleans has got a pretty checkered history,
it
you
does.
know, the sex and slave trade and things like that.
Right.
It's a big point of entry for, human trafficking. And do I think that that tunnel system could have been utilized for those things then? Yeah, I that's the first time that I ever went in that tunnel system. But the tunnel system, just about everybody who's an LSU or Tulane resident, doesn't matter
Hmm.
what you're in, everybody knew about the tunnel system that connected LSU to Tulane. Everybody had walked through it, hundreds of times. And the tunnel system was brisk. We always heard rumors that it went to the French Quarter, but I can tell you, just so you're clear, where I walked was 3.5 blocks away in a tunnel that connected the old Tulane Medical School to the brand new building of health and tropical diseases.
Reminds me of the rumors you hear about in LA and Laurel Canyon, the tunnels connecting like Houdini's mansion and Playboy Mansion and the Getty family's house and similar.
Well, you got to remember, people think it's crazy, but remember the stories that we heard in Brooklyn about the Hasidic Jews
Mhm.
having their tunnels under there, and then now you have videos on X, and you see those guys coming out with soiled mattresses and things like that.
It wasn't even Hasidic. I think it was Chabad Lubavitch,
Yeah,
which
I
is
mean, whoever it was, it still doesn't matter. The bottom line is we know what was going on. But my point to you
mhm,
is here we have video evidence. Has anybody done anything about it? No.
mhm.
Everybody's okay with it. That's what I'm trying to tell you. And the thing is, I know this inflames people when they hear it, but I think you just need to understand what's really going on here. You need to protect yourself from
Mhm.
your government. That's
Mhm.
the real story. You want to know the real reason I decided to come back on and do this second podcast with you? That's the take home of Trump's first 3 months in office, according to me. I can tell you I'm less optimistic than I was the first time I talked to you.
Of course. Well, it's probably a good place to wrap up. We're nearing 2 hours, but I mean, what's going to happen? It seems like a lot of things going on might be in order to set up some type of pretext for war in Iran or something like that. Are you worried about that happening, or do you think it's going to go a different route?
I don't think the United States is going to get involved in that war. One thing I can tell you about Trump that I'm pretty hardcore about. He doesn't want war either. But do I think that Israel is concerned that if they wage the war in Iran, will they have America do their bidding? In other words, will Big Brother be there to back them up? I don't think that's going to happen with Trump.
Why not?
Because I told you, he's not about wars. He's about rebuilding the United States. I can tell you the one thing that I really think that Trump's not full of shit about. He truly cares about this country. The DNA that I can tell you that is strong in him, he was truly John F. Kennedy Jr.'s best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he knows what happened to the Kennedy family. And I think he knows that his other friends that got him in the real estate business were involved in this. Do I think he understands Bibi Netanyahu much better? And I'm going to tell you, any prime minister of Israel, they're all, from Ben Gurion to right now, they're extensions of the monarchy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's who they are. They're also extensions of the elite banking system. Do I believe that the war that's being waged now, what Trump's really doing? He is arming the technocrats to take the banking elites out. That's the real interesting thing that's happening. I think this is like the Bolshevik Revolution. We're having a war within the war.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a silent war. And I believe that Trump believes, as a true patriot, that if he throws his weight behind Peter Thiel, the PayPal mafia, the Elon Musk types, that's a better group of people to be with than the enemy he knows, which are
But
the
that's
bank.
not better for us. Teal wants us all to just be.
Look, you asked me to give you my diagnosis. I'm not talking about us. Us, we need to take care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you listen to our first podcast and our second one, and you think the fucking government is coming to save you, you're a fucking idiot. You should just turn this podcast off and forget
Jump
it.
off a cliff. Yeah.
Right. I'm not. I think we're all in this N equals one. The reason I enjoy doing a podcast like this with you is I want people to know really what I think. I don't care if you don't think I'm right. I'm okay with that too. You have free will to choose this, but there's now enough data out there for you to put all these pieces together. Have no illusions. And if you don't put them together, I'm going to tell you, you're not a savage. You're not part of the team. And we are going to have to pick and choose sides. There's nobody who's going to lead us in DC, in my opinion, for the next 50 years that are truly going to be for we the people, until we the people fucking realize that these motherfuckers have been playing us against each other.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a story about right or left. Mm-hmm. They're doing this. You are being MK Ultra'd at scale. And all the stories that you see, that's exactly what they are. It's just like the Matrix.
Yeah. The right-left paradigm is one of the main reasons why they've been able to maintain the control that they do.
Correct. And they're going to keep distracting you with the collateral effects of electromagnetic radiation on human biology. That's what you're seeing. That's why you're seeing African guys go up to Sweden and rape their women. That's the reason why we have teachers allowing, females to undress in front of, transvestites. It's just fucking psychotic. And here's the thing. I just said this yesterday on Twitter, and I figured I was going to get a big outlash about it. It was just a guy that killed somebody, who molested his kid. And I'm like, if you're a fucking parent today and you put your kid in public school, you're a fucking idiot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're putting your kid where there's no books. They don't go out for gym. They're never outside. They're irradiating them all the time. They're making, to go to school, you got to take the fucking 72 jabs. You don't even realize that your kids are already controlled as soon as they come out of the vagina. The first thing they're doing is sending them with vitamin K and the hepatitis vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
You don't realize, like, you can't have your babies in the hospital. You can't put your babies in a government school. Like, when people say to me, why do you give Trump more benefit of the doubt? Well, he is closing the Department of Education. That's one of the biggest fucking parts of the MK Ultra DARPA program. Why? Because that's how you fucking get the vaccine schedule. Like, if you don't go to fucking school, government school,
mm-hmm.
and tell them, fuck you, I'm going to take care of my kid at home. But why does the money play into this? Because all parents need to work. Why? Because your money's worth fucking shit. So that's why both of you have to work, so they know that you're going to default to the easiest answer. So instead of having 3 cars in a big house, live in a fucking small house. Take Uber. Let your wife or you stay home. Whoever makes more fucking money, that's the one to go to work. Dude, that's what has to happen. Now, do I have any illusions of what I just told you? People are going to listen to this podcast and just go, fuck. Yeah, I understand.
Because it seems so daunting. It's like I have to either change my entire life or just accept that I'm a mind control slave.
Correct. So you know what I'm saying to you? The third thing that you need to read is Plato's Allegory of the Cave. This is the reason why I'm more pessimistic. Why? Guy like you, I think me and you will be running around in the sun. But I think most of your friends, most of your family, they're going to be in the cave watching Netflix and Joe Rogan.
Yeah. That's what I want to help people save people from is exactly that, because until you get out of the cave, you don't stand even a fucking chance.
Well, you don't realize when you get out of the cave, that's what puts you in the sun. Hopefully you're grounded. Remember what I told you. Eat like the great white shark and be like the Sphinx. I don't think I can make quantum physics of Robert O. Becker any more simple than that. That's the key parts of the regeneration program. You get that right, you will become a first principles thinker. Then you'll stop saying to me, Jack, can you make these blogs easier to understand? No, then you're going to understand the reason why, because I'm actually looking for the savages who truly want to know how chromium and how fluoride impact you and why they're using it, why they're doing what they're doing. When you begin to see it, then you see, okay, now I understand why Gates is trying to block the sun. Now I understand why Gates is trying to get all of his own animals so that they don't get the vaccines in the animals that Bobby Kennedy is letting them do right now. I mean, the parts are all there, but the key is, are you going to do the heavy lifting? Just remember what I said to you in the beginning of this. Do you think it was easy for Paul Revere and all those people back in the colonies to be fucking farmers, put their pitchforks down and pick up a musket and go against the greatest fucking army in the world? If you don't think that it's not lost on me that we're facing the exact same fucking set of circumstances right now, except King George is the guys in DC and they represent the same fucking guy, which is King George's lineage. Same people. He just has more partners now in the banking elites that run that desert in the Middle East. That's all it is. In other words, it's even a stronger army with better intelligence. But we did it once. I think we can do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think back in the day, people used to work and struggle and, go to the mines and come back, and they had to do all that for the very shitty, uncomfortable life that they lived in. And now we have the opposite of that. We are in kind of this neo-feudal system where we do have to still work and slave away, but then we can come home and take our Valium and turn on Netflix and all the other comfortabilities that keep us from doing anything that would jeopardize that comfort. So my hope is that somehow some cataclysmic event will make it so that nobody has that to fall back on, and then everybody just decides, well, it's time to install a new system.
The sun may have an answer for us. You got a preview of that last year when you saw the auroras down to Jamaica. Because the pole is moving, I'm just going to tell you, most people don't understand that we live in an electric universe. And do I believe the one thing that is an equalizer here? If the sun ever spits out a CME at us, that's going to change the game. Why? That completely takes our enemies out. And that will slow down the process. Now, I will tell you, millions will die because most people in the United States don't know how to fucking grow or shoot anything. But you'll be brought back in those times. And for people who don't know what the Carrington event is, go look it up. But I'm going to tell you, I have a pretty firm belief in the next 100 years, and it may even be in the next 20 or 30 years, that we're going to get that kind of event. Why? You don't get auroras down to the tropics unless something's cooking in the solar system. And I think something's cooking in the solar system, and that's the reason why the poles are moving the way they're moving. They're moving now more than they've ever moved before. And no, this is not the military. It's not HARP. I don't want any of the conspiracy people to think that's what it is. This is actually nature paying attention to the fucking idiots on the surface of this planet and what we're really doing. And if she farts our way, it's all over, bro. And that could be a big game changer. That is a weapon that the U.S. military, the Israeli military, they don't have an answer for.
Maybe that's just what we need.
Well, I got to be honest with you. I've mentioned it to people in the last couple of years, and I do believe we're getting closer to it. Why? It's not normal to see auroras down to the 20th latitude. But last May and June, it happened. And if you want to know the reason why the climate's really changing, it's not for the things that you're told to believe. It has more to do with actually what's going on in the heliospheric currents that are going on in the solar system. There's a lot of unusual things that satellites are picking up, that science is studying. Like you start reading outside of your disciplines and reading stuff from the electric universe, stuff from solar plasma physics, stuff from the new satellites. There's a lot of interesting things to pay attention to. And I'm going to tell you, do I believe that we have some big time power on our side? I believe we do. Maybe that's misplaced. Maybe it's the same kind of belief that I had on Bobby Kennedy. I don't know. But I'm still not totally pessimistic yet.
Well, maybe we'll regroup in a couple months when our country's deteriorated more and we have some more to talk about. But appreciate you coming on again, Jack. It's
Hey, no problem.
value it a
Anytime.
lot, man. Thank you.
All right. Just let us know when you release it.
Will do.
Take
Thanks.
care.
Take care, Jack. Bye bye.